So measuring your BMI, body mass index, is something you've likely had to do. It's the health test at your doctor's office, your gym, even your life insurance company might use it to help gauge your overall health. Because of its frequent use, and given that some studies say only about a quarter of adults in the U.S. can call themselves normal on the BMI scale, today we are asking about its reliability. Studio 5 health contributor Miki Eberhardt is joining me. Great to see you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So is this an ongoing kind of point of passion of yours? Have you taken a deep dive into it, or is it a recent study?
It's been an ongoing thing that I have had my finger on. Early on in my dietetics career, I saw how focused BMI was as part of a health assessment, and so learning more about it and seeing maybe how the reliability isn't there is helpful.
Let's start with the baseline. The BMI, body mass index, is what?
What is it? It is a simple height to weight measurement. So you take your weight in kilograms, divide it by meters squared, you get a number somewhere between 18 and 40, and then it's differentiated based off of that. So under 18 and a half, underweight. 18 to 25 is going to be normal or healthy, and then 25 to 30, overweight. Above 30 is obese, and I cringe even just giving those labels, which we'll talk about.
Well, it's super simplistic, and I'm assuming we'll get into that's part of the complicated relationship we have with this. But is that the reason you think that doctors rely on it so often and so readily? Yeah,
it definitely is used, and you'll see it in all the clinics, and I do think it's easy. It's just a quick assessment, and you have an answer. It's definitely used in research as well to kind of get a broad scope of what type of people we're looking at, but it's definitely not accurate for the individual.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the cringe factor that you say.
We have some problems.
Number one, you say it's not created for the individual.
No, it's not. And the reason is, if you look at it, it's just a height to weight ratio. So where is that weight coming from? We're not diving into that at all. Does someone have more muscle mass? Does someone have a bigger bone structure? So somebody that does lift weights, or even athletes, are going to come across as overweight or obese on that scale. So it's not even an accurate tool when it comes to assessing an individual's health.
What was this originally created for? Was it for the doctor's office? Was it for, this health assessment approach?
It was never intended for health assessments, and I think that's what's so interesting. It was actually created in the 1830s. By a Belgian astronomer, of all things, that created this to be able to use like probability and populations. It was never meant for a clinical setting. It was never meant for a health assessment.
Where did we go wrong then in making it part of our medical culture?
And that is a big problem, because we don't account. One of the other problems is that it does not account for diversity. Like here in America, we're a melting pot of all these different cultures and ethnicities. This BMI is based off of white European men. And so what we use it for today in America does not account for any sort of ethnic group. Also, the entire female population.
Thank you. How disappointing.
And our bodies are a bit different than men's.
How disappointing. And you talk about, the focus being on simply height, weight, that simplistic kind of mathematical computation. You say that portrays a skewed value of what is really healthy.
Exactly. And what is fascinating with this, Brooke, is now that we've had BMI research for so long, it's skewed where modern day data today shows that the group that is in what would be considered overweight, the 25 to 30, actually has the lowest mortality of any other group on that BMI scale.
But you go by that label and you feel bad about it, or you feel worried about it.
Exactly. Somebody may be pressured to go into a lower BMI group where they have no reason to have to do that.
So is it dramatic to say it's harmful?
It can be.
It can be.
And for one of those could be that reason, that it kind of sets up these arbitrary goalposts of where your weight should be. And if someone is at a healthy, happy weight, in the 25, 30, whatever it may be, but feels this undue pressure to try and get lower, that's not healthy. The other couple things where it can be harmful is, let's say a physician is going off of, oh, you're a normal, healthy weight, and doesn't delve into maybe some unhealthy behaviors that you have because you present at a healthy weight. And on the flip side, the overweight stigma that may come into play. If you're seeing a doctor and he's just giving advice based off that BMI alone, they may miss some other diagnoses. And we know from research that medical stigma with weight is definitely present.
Sure. Let's talk about maybe some more accurate ways to assess health, because I do think, obviously it's valuable to be able to say, have that objective assessment as to where my health is. And weight is certainly can be part of that.
The big picture.
Yeah, the bigger picture. You want us to look at our waist circumference.
Yes, and these are some other great tools. So waist circumference for women, after you're out of childbearing years where your waist is expanding and contracting, around 35 inches or below at the smallest part of your waist is a great metric. It's kind of, we've probably heard of the apple body type versus the pear body type. When we carry more weight through our midsection, it can be a risk for chronic disease. So that's a factor. Combine that with other metabolic factors, things like fasting glucose and blood pressure, HDL level and triglyceride levels. Those levels combined with that waist circumference are little red flags that could be some chronic disease. If my BMI is elevated and all of those markers are perfect, no stress.
Okay.
We don't need to worry.
And why is the midsection, carrying weight in the midsection, so problematic?
It puts a little more emphasis and on your organs that have to work through things. It kind of can be harmful and just create more work there than what is needed.
You talked about those metabolic markers. That's a blood test that we use to determine
exactly.
those?
Like a lab test, you'd go in and see your doctor. And I think this is important, Brooke, that if you go in and you feel like you're kind of being talked to about, like you feel like the BMI is being highly prioritized in a situation where you feel that's not necessary, being an advocate for yourself in that environment and saying, like, is this the same advice you'd give to someone that has a normal BMI? Or I can see, I've learned a little bit more about the history of BMI, share your knowledge, and then say, are there other markers that we could test to get a bigger picture?
What good advocacy language.
Right?
Yes.
And I think it would actually give pause and be like, yeah, I think you're right. Because, like, let me give you an example. You go in and you've got stomach pain or something else, and it may be tied to this or that. And a doctor, if you're at a higher BMI, a doctor may say, I think if you lose weight, that would be helpful.
Sure.
If I go in at a normal weight and I have stomach pain, what tests would they run that would be different? And so that's the point. We don't want this. We don't want the BMI to be the reason something gets done or not done.
Because weight loss can be attached to a number of different symptoms that may or may not be the actual physical issue.
And going back to that modern day data, people that are in the overweight group can actually live longer and may be healthier. So it's important to see the big picture.
Do you find doctors shifting to that big picture?
I'm seeing the shift.
Okay.
And it's really, really great. And I feel like maybe some of the older doctors, like how when I first started dietetics, it was a big push.
Sure.
If they are still in that same zone and kind of have kept static, they may be like, oh, well, this is interesting.
This is information.
But I see the shift happening. I see it being talked about. I see it out there in literature. So I think it's the wave is happening, which is so great.
And that example group you talked about, right? The athletes, the muscle dense individuals that are considered by the BMI to be overweight. That kind of points to this idea of behaviors. Like, does our lifestyle factor in, or should we prioritize our life behaviors as part of our overall health?
Yeah, when we're looking at other things to look at besides a BMI number, that is the biggie, because those are the things that we can control. And we may not be able to control what our bone density was or, what genetic base we have for our bodies. But things like stress management and getting more sleep and more movement and being able to get an abundance of fruits and vegetables, those are good habits that you can always have control over. They're always going to be pro-health.
That are within your grasp. This was a really empowering conversation. Miki, thank you so much.